Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Football Roundup podcast, where we talk all things football. As you can see today, again, James isn't with me. Like I said, it's going to be a bit of a busy period for him, busy period for me. So again, a bit of a lack of content, but that's okay because I've got some different ideas coming up. And obviously, like as you can see here, we've got a rankings list. So this isn't a normal podcast episode where we talk about football and what's going on in the world. I just thought I'd do something a little bit different. And this is my Liverpool FC player 25-26 tier ranking list. So as you can see, we've got poor, average, decent, good, amazing, and down here we've got the whole squad who've played a game this season. Okay, and I'm going to be going through explaining a little bit why I think the players have been poor, average, decent, good. You get the idea. So to start off with, we are going to go with Alisson Becker. For me, Alisson's been an interesting one. I think compared to Alisson of a few seasons ago, we haven't seen anywhere near what we're used to seeing. I think he's had some very good games, not just this season, but again across his whole Liverpool career. But he has had some good games this season. But one thing that really stands out of Alisson this season is his availability, and I think it's been a bit of a big issue for me is the fact that yes, okay, he's probably one of the best goalies in the world, if not the best goalkeeper in the world, but he's not really available enough to really push on. So I think, like I said, I'm not doubting his ability. Best goalkeeper I've ever seen at Liverpool. Amazing shot stopper. Great with his feet. Obviously, injury concerns are there, but like I said, he's decent and would definitely keep going into next season. This leads me on to Georgi Mamardashvili, who was brought in to be a sort of backup to Alisson. I don't think he'd probably expected to get as many minutes as he has done this season with the Alisson injuries, cup games, European games that he's played in, and I think, unlike Alisson, actually, he's been available quite a lot this season. Obviously, I know he suffered an injury against Everton and came back pretty well. But I'd say he's been average, to be honest. I think he's done an okay job. Not as good as Alisson when he plays. You can tell we notice when Alisson doesn't play. I think the games that stand out for me from Mamardashvili was Galatasaray away in the Champions League round of 16. Yes, we lost that game, but it could have been a lot more of a deficit. It could have been 2-3, 4-0 if it weren't for him in goal. I think the real question mark for Mamardashvili is his feet and how he does with the ball at his feet. I think there's no question of the shot stopping, whereas you look at someone like Alisson, who's a complete package, good at shot stopping, good with his feet, good in the build-up, whereas Mamardashvili, no one's questioning his shot stopping. What we are questioning is potentially how he develops with his feet and how we can build up with him and how we can, almost be that extra defender. But I think, again, he's going to be the successor to Alisson when he eventually leaves, probably going into season after next. So I think, like I said, we need to back him, we'll keep him. He's a good one to keep around. And I think it's been a pretty average season for him. And I think he wasn't expecting to get as many minutes, so fair play to him. Right. Next one we move on to is Freddie Woodman. And I actually think he's been decent. Don't get me wrong, I don't like Mamardashvili. I don't think he would have expected to play really any minutes at all. I think, like I said, when he's been called upon, he's been decent. I think the first Crystal Palace game in the Carabao Cup wasn't great. Got chucked in with a bunch of sort of kids, our academy kids, played against Crystal Palace, lost quite badly in that game. But I think against Crystal Palace the second time round, and to be honest with you, in the Everton game when he was chucked in after Mamardashvili's injury, and obviously Alisson was already injured, I think he's done more than okay. And I don't think we can't really expect a lot from him. He was brought in as a third choice goalkeeper, wasn't expecting to play. And I think everything he's done, apart from the Man United game where I think he could have done better on a few of the goals last weekend, but I think he's done completely everything we've asked him to do. And I think, like I said, he's brought in to be a third choice goalkeeper and did that really well. So now moving on to the defenders. So the first one is Virgil van Dijk, and this is a tough one. I'm edging between good and amazing. I think I'm going to put in good because I don't think anyone's had an amazing season from Liverpool this season. I think we've conceded far too many goals, we've lost far too many games, but some of the criticism that Virgil van Dijk gets, I would never understand. Because the only reason he gets his criticism is because he set his own bar too high. I think, obviously, when he first joined Liverpool, the impact he had under the Klopp system, how good he was, his defending style went mental over internet, mental over football. And I just think, obviously, as he gets older, the pace drops off, the defending ability drops off a little bit. But what we've seen a lot this season is his aerial threat from corners. And I think that's unmatched compared to most centre-backs in the league, where most corners that are on his head do go in the goal. And the problem is we don't get enough corners that hit his head. It's always cleared away, doesn't beat the first man, too far to the back post, out of play. But I think don't take anything away from his performance this season. I think he's pulled Konate through a lot of games this season, especially in the first half of the season. Go back to Newcastle and a few other games like that. I think he's really pulled Konate through, and he's made that defence look very good. And I think the criticism of him is, like I said, there's always going to be criticism in football, and especially playing for Liverpool, and his wages and how much he paid for him. But again, great player, amazing captain. We'll keep him around next season, probably one more year like Alisson, and yeah, I think he's done very well. Now, Konate, another one. Start of the season, here. I mean, some of the games, Newcastle, Galatasaray, most European games I saw him, he wasn't very good. Up until he came back in January in that Newcastle game when he scored a goal, here. Again, it's tough because we've lost a lot of games and you want to rely on your defenders to pull you through these games and, not concede the chances, not concede the goals. Goes to the goalkeepers as well. But I just think the way Konate's been this season, especially in the second half from January, and let's not forget what he's gone through this season. Obviously, the unfortunate passing of his dad and the way he came back and scored in that Newcastle game, and he came back to the team early. Slot gave him more time off, but he wanted to come back and help the team because we were in a rough patch. The Newcastle game was sort of that start of that little purple patch mid-season. But, I mean, yeah, it's hard to put anyone in good or amazing, but I think these two have been good this season. Don't get me wrong, there's been mistakes, there's been bad games. They've both pulled each other through games. I think Konate's pulled Van Dijk through a few games this season, but I think together, they're a great partnership. I'm hoping Konate signs that contract, stays for another year or two. Well, even 3 or 4 years would be lovely. But yeah, had a good season, and I think we'll obviously continue to get better and we'll build next season. Joe Gomez, I think, gets a decent. Joe Gomez, again, is another one like Alisson, where the fitness is always a concern. He's in for 2 games, he's out for 2 games, he's in for 3, out for 3. There's never a sort of consistent level of performance, consistent level of sort of fitness and availability. And don't get me wrong, Joe Gomez is great to have around. I think can play left back. He can play all across the back 4. I think we've seen him a lot of right back this season. When Frimpong struggled, we'll get up to him in a little bit. But he's done quite well. Nothing special, I don't think. Nothing in terms of still never yet to score a goal, and it's a shame for the lad that he hasn't scored that goal. But I think defensively done okay. He's a little bit slow, a little bit immobile, going forward. Doesn't really offer us too much going forward. Has that sort of long throw sort of as an additional weapon that we use, but apart from that, I think it's just been okay and decent. So yeah, I think good Joe Gomez gets a decent. This leads me on to Giovanni Leone. I mean, from what we saw, to be honest, I might just leave him here because we saw one game against Southampton in the Carabao Cup where he made his debut alongside Isak. He looked the part, he looked amazing, composure, big physically, a threat in the air. But like I said, we've seen one game this season, so I can't really judge anything off sort of what I've seen. So I'm excited to see him play next season. I really am, because he's hopefully getting back to fitness soon. I think he can really push for one of our centre-back positions next season, alongside Jeremy Jacquet, who will be brought in next season. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave him here, but has done okay. Bit like Conor Bradley. I'm actually going to put Conor Bradley in average. Again, like most of these players, there's been good games, but there's been quite a few bad games. I think one thing with Conor Bradley is tendency to jump in. I think he burst onto the scene, obviously lost his father early on in his Liverpool career, and that must have been hard for him, but he burst onto the scene under Klopp, played lots of minutes, obviously went on loan to Bolton, won the Papa John's trophy, and kind of never looked back from there. Another one like Gomez, like Alisson, is where fitness is a bit of an issue, because he starts the season okay and then gets a long-term injury against Arsenal, and obviously, yes, it's not his fault he keeps getting injured, but obviously it's unlucky, and the way football works is that you can't really have those players around anymore. But I'm not giving up on Conor Bradley. I think there's a great player there, a great right back there. It would have been interesting to see if they were both fit, Frimpong and Bradley, to see how the competition between the 2 right backs would have gone. But yeah, it's tough because, like I said, there's been some good games, but there's been some bad games. So I think overall, average season, looking to build next season, and hopefully it gets better from there. Frimpong. See, Frimpong, I think for me, goes in the poor category. Again, has had minimal good games. I'm trying to think of a game where he's probably played quite well. I think in Europe he's done okay. Atletico Madrid at home, strings to mind. We won that game. But apart from that, I don't really know how we use Frimpong going forward, to be honest. I think he's not a right back, and he's not good enough going forward to be a right winger. So he's almost a right wing back. But at the moment, and it's rumoured that Slot stays, and that's a different conversation. But if Xabi Alonso doesn't come in, I just don't see how this works, because it's almost like having Trent, but with less of an output going forward. Because yes, with Trent Alexander-Arnold, there was always question marks about his defending, his defensive, effort and his application to defending. But at least what you knew of Trent was the crosses, the output, the goals you saw. It's almost, we're almost in the same boat with Frimpong, where the only difference with Frimpong is we're not doubting his defensive application. We're not doubting his effort. I just don't think he's very good of a defender. And if you look at the Bundesliga, he was part of a good Leverkusen side for 2 years where he didn't probably have to do that much defending because they were always on the front foot. Whereas he's come to Liverpool and we haven't had too much of the ball. We have been on the back foot in most of our games have been on the back foot. I don't really remember games where we've looked incredibly convincing. So I think scored a few goals, got a few assists, but I think, like I said, I'm not giving up on Frimpong again. Anyone who we signed in the summer, I'm completely not giving up on. I think can definitely be there next season. Isn't a flop, deserve more than one season, deserve a lot more time, and I really have high hopes for Frimpong to continue, but we just need to find out his best position and find out where to play him. Next one is Milos Kerkez, and I'm actually going to go decent for Milos Kerkez. I think start of the season, like Konate, was probably here. We sort of tried to play him in that sort of defensive, wholehearted defensive left back in that kind of back three system where it didn't really work, where we sort of tucking in from left back to back three, where that's kind of a bit of misprofiling from the club. But then, sort of second half of the season, we put him in his position where he's allowed to bomb forward and he's aggressive. And like I said, with Conor Bradley, he's aggressive too much. But I think Kerkez is aggressive in the right moments. I think yes, there's question marks of his attacking output. I mean, some of the crosses I've seen from him, have been atrocious where they go too far over the crossbar or they're, too heavily fizzed in. I think if he tones back a little bit, becomes a little bit less aggressive, there's no doubt the pace is there. Same with Frimpong. The pace is there. We can really use that as a handful tool going into next season. I think we need to sign pace. I think pace has been a really big issue this season, but I think two players that do have pace are Kerkez and Frimpong. So like I said, we'll definitely be willing to continue with Kerkez. I think will be a great signing. Obviously Robertson leaving this season, so will be great. Going forward, I think Tsimikas will come back from Roma and be his understudy, so I think there's potential to be very good. So yep, Kerkez has been decent. Andy Robertson. Again, I'm actually going to put Andy Robertson in decent. In this case, I think Andy Robertson has been quite unlucky because the thing of Andy Robertson is when he's played, we look so much more calm at the back, so much more solid defensively. And actually, what you found with Andy Robertson is yes, the assists have dried up, but what you have had is quite a few goals. I mean, the goal against Crystal Palace the other weekend where he slots that away like a striker, and I'm thinking, wow, that's a great finish. But legend. Great player, great servant to the club. He's going to get all his flowers in the last two games. I'd imagine him alongside Salah will play, in both of the last two games. He's going to get his lovely send-off at Anfield. Wish him nothing but the best whenever he does. Obviously, a shame he's going to Tottenham in the Premier League, but, well, that's the rumour at the moment. So, yeah, really sad to see him go, but wish him all the best. Endo, average. We didn't really see too much of Endo this season. Obviously, played in that Sunderland game where it always sticks out to me, no one doubts his effort. No one doubts his dedication to the cause, but one thing I think lacks a little bit is his ability. I don't think he's ever really been able to push on. Slots never really fancied him in that midfield spot. But one thing, I've never been able to doubt is his dedication and his application to the cause. I think, goes down against someone with bad injury, gets back up to defend the corner, probably does himself a lot more damage getting up, but because he wanted to help his team, didn't want to concede a goal. I think that's what we can really respect, and I think it probably is time to go because he's only getting older. I think he'll be 31, 32. Injuries will start to creep in like a few of our players. So, like I said, league winner, League Cup winner. Wish him nothing but the best. And yeah, move on. McAllister. I'm actually going to go here for McAllister. I really don't think he's had a great season. I think the lack of legs. I think the lack of output. He sort of dangles legs in the tackle. All these things. He's quite slow. He's not very agile this season. I don't really know what's happened because McAllister of last season, arguably one of our best players. Amazing. McAllister this season, poor. I'm not too sure why this is. I don't know why the drop-off's been so drastic. Obviously, the World Cup's coming out of Argentina. Is that something sort of in the back of his mind? I don't know. I'm just making assumptions here. I really don't know. But yeah, this is one of the ones where do we part ways and bring in someone better? Because I just don't know of McAllister. I think Gravenberch has really been putting his weight this season. It's not been great, but McAllister's really not helped him next to him. I think he's let runners go off him far too many times. I think, don't get me wrong, like everyone, there's been good games. Real Madrid in the Champions League. Quite a lot of the Champions League games he's played well. He scored some important goals for us this season. But overall, judging off overall performance, I think has been poor alongside Frimpong. But like I said, I personally wouldn't sell. If we have to sell, I would to bring someone else better in, which we'll get into in a little bit. I wouldn't sell personally off the top of my head because I quite like McAllister. I quite like what he offers. I think very technical, can carry the ball, is not a bad passer. I think there's a lack of passers in that team, so I think to have another passer would be amazing. But I think we'll go this season. Premier League winner, Carabao Cup winner again. He's done amazing. So yeah, hopefully stays, but probably will go. Next one is Ryan Gravenberch, who I think... Now, interesting. Definitely not here. Definitely not here. It's either between this and this. I think here. I think Ryan Gravenberch has done, okay this season. I think his ability to turn away from pressure, carry the ball, like I said about McAllister earlier, Gravenberch is a little bit different. He's not really a passer of the football. He's more of a ball carrier. I mean, the amount of time you see him get it on the half turn from Van Dijk or Konate, turn with a man up his back, turn, relieve the pressure and play forward and, dribble forward, give us that territory that we need. And I think there's not really many better midfielders in the world that will do that. Obviously, signed a new long-term deal, is definitely going to be around. I think obviously saw that great goal against Chelsea on the weekend. That was a great goal. I mean, unfortunately we didn't build on that, but that's kind of been the story of, this season. But yeah, definitely stay. Great player. Last season was amazing. This season's been okay. I think no doubt he'll kick on. And yeah. Right. Next one. Dominic Szoboszlai. No doubt here. I think Dominic Szoboszlai has been in his own sort of league this season. I think he's pulled us through so many games. The free kicks, the goals, the assists, the work rate. Standing up for people who have been hidden in the media a little bit. He's always the one that goes and stands up. He's always the one calling out saying it's not acceptable. He's the one backing the manager. He's the one doing this. And at times, some of these other players haven't. And I think really, really good player. Really, really technical. I hope he stays. I think he will stay. I think he's one that we will build the team around. And he's going to be a success for many, 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 many years to come. But that's one of the minutes to give Szoboszlai's flowers. I think amazing player. Don't know where we'd be without him this season, to be honest. I think mid-table, bottom half of the table. The goals he has, the assists he has this season, yeah, amazing. So Szoboszlai is a definite keep. Next one, Curtis Jones. See, Curtis Jones is an interesting one because there's always been a sort of, rumour that him and Slot don't see eye to eye. But I think here. I think it's been decent this season. I've been asked to play lots of different positions, number 10, centre mid, holding midfielder, right back, and every time he's done that, he's done well. He's very good at sort of, like Gravenberch, he's a good ball carrier, he's good at sort of getting away from pressure, coming away, getting us that territory. I don't see him being the guy who we build the midfield around. I see him being more of a, supporting centre midfielder, sort of backup right back kind of thing, but I would not get rid of him by any means necessary. I think would keep around, local boy. It's always nice to have that Scouser, obviously, after Trent leaving last season. It's always nice to have a Scouser in the team. There's that amazing chant about that, Scouser in the team. But, yeah, I think it's been okay. It's done decent-ish. The output probably needs to improve a little bit, but that's not his job. We've brought in attacking players to do that. But I think would keep. It's done okay. And, yeah, one to keep around for next season. I'm going to go with training on the average. I haven't seen too much of him. That cameo against Wolves was unbelievable. Looked like the best player on the pitch. Granted, we were 2-1 up at the time. I think it was 2-1 up at the time or 2-0 up at the time. It was only 15 minutes and he just kept the ball ticking. So has done well in spells that he's had, Champions League minutes. But we'll definitely keep it around. I want to see him getting more minutes next season in the midfield, especially if McAllister's drop-off is still the same. I want to see him getting more minutes and, yeah. We're going to go with Mo Salah. I think this really pains me to say it, but I just think he's been average this season. I think start of the season here, drop-off was unheard of. The give Mo his dough last season. I mean, some of the things I've heard recently saying Salah should have parted ways last season, and I always said that, but I don't think he should have done. I think if you go back to last season when we just won the Premier League, the fans are saying give Mo his dough. The season he just had, the season we had, no one ever was thinking, oh, let's get rid of him, let's part ways on a high. No chance. Everyone wanted 1-2 years, another 1 to 2 years of Salah, and unfortunately it hasn't worked out. I think the loss of pace, the loss of legs, the loss of dribbling is, it's been quite drastic, and it's quite sad to say because it's been a lot more drastic than me and a lot of Liverpool fans would have thought. So for me, Salah, I really wanted him to stay. I really think he's a great player. Unfortunately, I think it is the right time to go though. I think, like I said, I'd love him to stay just from a sentimental point of view. A legend, one of the best I've seen in my time. Egyptian king, the goals, the moments, the trophies. But I think right now it's just time to part ways, and that Brentford game in a couple of weeks' time is going to be a really, really emotional and sad day. So, legend, leader, great player. Rio, good. I think every time he's played, he's the kind of player that gets the fans off their seat. I think it's been amazing. when it shows when he was getting subbed off last weekend and there was boos from Anfield. That's the first time I've ever seen boos or ever heard boos at Anfield when a player's come off. And he just gets fans off your seat. He gets defenders on edge. I think he's always looking to take on his man, and that's great. I think we've lost that in the Premier League. I think not many players want to take on their man anymore, and just it's become very robotic. I mean, Pep's a great manager, but I think he's made the league so robotic in the sense that we always look. The winger gets it, he turns back and he passes, and we move again. And that's great. When the team's under pressure, that's great because you want to keep them moving and tire them out. But actually, what I've seen from Rio is he just gets the ball, he dribbles. He's so unpredictable. His turns, his step overs, his chops, it's anything. He's so positive, it's amazing. I think at only 17 years of age, there's so much more to come, and we've signed a superstar here. So, like I said, we've seen when the output's improved as of late. I think will only improve next season with more minutes, and I think it's one that's really knocking on the door for more minutes. So, Rio, stay. Gakpo, average. I think he's been average only because the output's dried up. I think, again, another one, work rate, can't fault. I think he's done okay. I don't really know what to say about Gakpo. He's done okay, but also he's come up clutch in some moments, but the output's really, really, really dried up. And I don't think he offers enough pace, offers enough prolificness. He just doesn't offer enough to carry on starting as of next season. So I think Gakpo is one that I don't think we should sell, don't think we will sell, but I think should play more of a backseat role going into next season. So yeah, I think Gakpo is a keep. Sorry, I've just realised I haven't got Verts on here. Oh, that's terrible from me. Anyway, Chiesa. Going to go on to Federico Chiesa. I think Chiesa's been average. I think, like I said, another one who hasn't really been given the minutes he's deserved this season. I think he's done okay in spells. Comes on, does the odd thing. Maybe scores the odd goal, gets the odd assist, comes up in clutch. But we've never really seen it from Chiesa. Injuries have been a little bit, consistent at Liverpool, but we've never really seen it. And unfortunately, like I said, I think it's time to go for his career. For his career and his dignity. I think he needs to go because I think there's no point him staying at Liverpool, him being a bit part player, him not getting the minutes he sort of deserves. Because I think he can go to Italy and he can make a really good career for himself out in Italy, like he said, Napoli, Juventus, back to Juventus, anywhere, and do really well. So Chiesa has been average for me. Isak has been average. I think obviously jeopardised this season, obviously not having pre-season and going on strike, and fair enough if that's the only way that Newcastle were going to give him to us, but unfortunately it really has taken its toll on him. Not been fit anywhere near enough. It's been off the pace in most of the games. But to be honest with you, like I said, we can't really expect anything from Isak. I knew when he was fit we couldn't expect anything. I knew now we can't really expect anything. Next season, after a full pre-season of work, hopefully he has a good World Cup and hits next season really hard and really brings us forward. So yeah, Isak average. Ekitike, amazing. I think the impact Ekitike had on this team has been unbelievable. Alongside Szoboszlai, the only two that really looked like scoring a goal, the only two that had consistent performance, the only two that pulled us through tough games where he scored goals, he got assists, he gave everything, he looked a threat. And unfortunately, like I said, with Isak not being out, Gakpo not doing it up front, we needed that really, physical, prolific presence. And Ekitike's been that. I mean, no one expected, Ekitike to have this impact. Everyone thought it'd be Isak, taking the centre stage, Ekitike sort of being that second fiddle. But nope, it's been the other way round. And yeah, it's been very good from Ekitike. So well done to him. Well done to Liverpool for the recruitment. Obviously, unfortunately, missing the World Cup. Hopefully, he gets well soon and comes back, firing. Because I have no doubt that we have, two great players there. So, sorry, bear with me. Next player is obviously Verts. I don't have on here, which is a bit stupid of me. But I think if I had Verts on here, it would be decent. I think struggled at the start to get with the pace of the Premier League. I think it took its toll on him in terms of the Bundesliga is a little bit slower than the Premier League, and I think in spells he did really well. Had that purple patch linking up with Ekitike. But I think the Verts hate is very forced. Yes, the price tag is absurd, obscene, not something we've seen before, but unfortunately, that's not his fault, and he's still a young kid, remember. And coming into one of the most competitive leagues in the world, one of the most physical leagues in the world. I mean, his physique has improved big time, and I will die on this hill. I really, 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 really think there's a successful Liverpool player there. I think he's going to be a great player for years to come. I think it's going to be amazing next season, and for years to come, I think can hit the last two games of the season hard. I know there's a rumour of a stomach bug. Hopefully he can play against Villa, but secure Champions League, go again next season, and hopefully build onto a little title charge next season. Now, that leads me on to, as you can see here, I've got a few players that we potentially could sign and should sign. So, the first one is Yan Diamonde. And I think, I'm not going to put him in here, but I just think Yan Diamonde, for us, could be amazing. I think the only risk of Yan Diamonde is the price tag we'll pay, okay? And also the fact he's only had one season of Bundesliga, one season of senior football. And that don't get me wrong, that's a big issue for me. 80-90 million pounds on a player with one senior season is a risk where we can't really afford any more risks in a team that already has a lot of holes, unfortunately. So I personally probably would do the deal just because, we lack that pace. We lack sort of that prolificness. We lack that sort of directness that he offers. I've seen a lot of him. I've been impressed. So I'm hoping we can get the deal over the line, but I'm not too sure. He's an interesting one. Matty Fernandez. Watched him a lot of Southampton last season. Have monitored him close at West Ham this season, and I think he's got everything personally. I think it's not prolific. Is sort of tenacious in the tackle. Can get the ball like Gravenberch and progress it forward. Is a great passer of the football. I think would do the deal, should do the deal, and is part of my sort of dream summer list. I mean, this guy here, Elliot Anderson, is the ideal, the dream to go next to Gravenberch. If we sell McAllister, this is the guy I'd be going for. I mean, some of the goals, some of the assists, the work rate, the effort, the defensive. I mean, this guy's got everything. He could really be a top player. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll do the deal because of the price tag, and Forest probably wait to the World Cup to do it, and that World Cup's only going to bring his price up. I think he starts every game for England. I think the World Cup really is going to be a make or break for him in terms of in the price tag. If he has a bad World Cup, it could be 65, 70. If he has a good World Cup, it could be anywhere between 125. I mean, the market's crazy. So I'm hoping we can get this deal done. But I think at 125 million, I don't think we can afford to do 125 plus 80, 90. So it's going to be an interesting one. The next one's an alternative to Diamonde, and that's Bradley Barcola. First season at PSG did really well. Ousmane Dembele kind of gets all the flowers, but his output really doesn't get the flowers it deserves. I think he's had a few injuries, but not too many. I think, like Rio, is a bit unpredictable, has the turns, is direct, is actually prolific in the French league, and would definitely be someone I consider. Now, into a bit of a controversial one. Michael Kayode. I think, with Frimpong having a poor season, I think Michael Kayode is someone we really should be going for. I mean, like I said, I watch football, I love football. I've seen a lot of Brentford in the Premier League. His long throw, his effort, his defensive capabilities, his attacking capabilities, his size is something they could really use going into next season. I think maybe if we don't do it in the summer, give Frimpong to the January, and I think we should go all out for this guy. There's no doubt going to be competition, but like I said, it's Liverpool, and I'm hoping he would sign. Next one is Anthony Gordon. I would personally not do this deal because I think the Everton link is always a bit of an issue. I just don't think he's the right guy. I think no doubt he's a very good player. We'll go to Bayern Munich. We'll probably do quite well. Newcastle need to sell someone, whether that be Tonali, Bruno G, Gordon. I think we'll sell someone. I think he's a good deal for someone who they pick whoever he goes to. But I just don't think that's the right fit for Liverpool. So anyway, that's kind of my ratings going into this season, into next season. For this season, going into next season, and let me know what you think in the comments. But before we finish, I kind of want to end on this. This is sort of our lineup going into next season. Assuming that all these players are signed, all these players stay. So obviously in goal, Alisson, left back Kerkez, centre backs Van Dijk, Konate, right back Kayode, Gravenberch and Alisson would be an interesting one. Szoboszlai in the 10. Vert's going on that left channel, Yan Diamonde on that right channel, and Isak going through the middle. I think that's a team that's really capable, and I think everyone's going to get better. We don't know what Chelsea, we don't know what Newcastle, we don't know what United, City, Arsenal are going to do. Okay, but what we do know is we can go big again. Hopefully, sell a few players, offload a few players. Joe Gomez I think should go. A few others, McAllister maybe. So if we can recoup some funds and go again, I think it could be a very positive season for us. So, just from me, thank you all for listening and watching. New episode out next week. Okay, stay tuned, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.